Welcome to the RaceGuru Thunder Hour. I'm your co-host, Rich. Don't follow me on X Maletto. Joined, as always, by the man, the myth, the legend, behind the curtain, who's in front of the curtain today, Sean Engel. Please do follow him on X at SeanE247. And the Marlin is back. Our secret weapon when it comes to DFS lineups, Mark Hogan. Please give him a follow on X at DFS_Marlin. And I'm not blowing smoke at Mark, man. I take a lot of advice the way he builds DFS lineups. He's good at all the DFS sports, although we are appreciative to have him over here with us to join us on the RaceGuru Thunder Hour to talk NASCAR and some racing. And as always, we'd like to give a thanks to the Elite Plus Network that allows us to host this, all a part of the FantasyGuru.com family. Please head over to FantasyGuru.com, click subscribe. All our football packages are discounted as far as I know right now, and I don't expect that to last much longer. Once we get to August, it's going to be full price, people. But if you want to make sure you're taking advantage of every discount possible, feel free to hit us at support@fantasyguru.com. Be nice. Whisper sweet nothings into Ted or Jeff's ears and see if they can help you out. Let them know what kind of packages you're looking for, what you need, what you're trying to mix and combo, and they will take care of you. I stand by our customer service outside of me. We have a lot of professional people that do an excellent job that don't get snippy. So feel free to reach out. And if you are watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe and like button if you don't mind. Goes a long way. We know there's only 3 of you listening and watching, but we love you 3. So give us a little bit of love back if you don't mind.
And
Gentlemen,
be sure to leave some comments too. That always helps.
Oh, good call. Any comments you want, good or bad, we'll take them. We're not above begging for comments, to be honest with you. So go ahead, post those comments.
Yes.
We are back to talk more road racing, as if one road race, well, I guess it's a street race last week, but we will be talking more road racing this week. But Sean, I don't know about you, but are you guys want to talk any other info? Because there's only so much to talk about when one guy dominated the weekend on the roads, but there's other NASCAR news. So Sean, I tell you what, why don't you lead us off with how you want to take us down the NASCAR road today?
All right, so let's talk our way through Chicago there. The big story of the weekend ended up being Shane Van Gisbergen and his street course racing dominance. He just absolutely owns this track, and he did just that this past weekend, sweeping both the Xfinity and Cup Series races right there, too. In the Xfinity Series, he ended up beating out Connor Zilic, and that was an interesting finish, too, all that's said and done, too, because Connor legitimately gave SVG a run for his money right there at the end. And then,
man, he's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, real fun to watch. And then in the Cup Series, well, it was a little bit less of a competition, but although I'd say some drivers did give him a run for his money a little bit in Cup, too. I mean, let's not forget how good Michael McDowell was within that whole first stage and actually outpaced him there for a little while. For example.
What happened to his vehicle? I heard he had trouble. I only caught, well, as I told you guys, I was trying to go golfing, so I finally due to the weather was able to go Sunday, and so the wife tried to record the race for me, and it didn't work out. There were some challenges, so all I caught was the post race. So I heard about all sorts of craziness from, Bubba and Bowman. I still don't know what happened there. I heard McDowell looked great, but then disappeared. I heard there was car troubles.
Yeah, he had a stuck throttle issue.
Is it stuck throttle? Is that what happened to Cody Ware? Did you guys see the Cody Ware incident?
Yeah, that Cody Ware incident, which there's some other talking points we can definitely make about that incident too, for sure. But
you know what's ironic?
Go ahead.
I didn't see any racing action with the post race and all that. However, TNT did not catch the Cody Ware incident, and I have plenty of videos of the Cody Ware incident across my Facebook and Twitter feeds.
I mean, that was my initial reaction. Was TNT was so bad with the coverage. They also completely botched the live coverage between Alex Bowman and Bubba Wallace when Bubba Wallace spun around towards the end. They didn't even revisit it, the actual footage of it, until after the race. I was like, they took off the shot right as he started to spin him around. I was like, what just happened? And they're showing like the back of the field at that point. And they never go back, but they're commentating on it, and they're like, "Oh, and Bubba Wallace just got spun around," and that was for like what, 3rd place? I want to say, Sean, or where was he? I think they were running top 5.
That was inside the top 10 at the time too. Both of them were in the top 10. So as far as that was happening, they were showing all the battling that would lead up towards the inevitable contact and them getting together a few times, but they did not show the actual moment that Bubba Wallace spun off of Bowman's bumper like that.
And they were going back and forth for like probably 3/4 of a lap. It was intense. I could not believe they took it off that shot in that moment at the exact wrong time. Let's go back to Amazon, please. TNT.
Okay, so I want to ask you this, Mark, because you probably weren't watching much 10, 12 years ago. I have been on record as saying somebody changed a position at Fox because Fox used to be really good about going through the field, and they were the staple of showing the precursor to the incidents. Like my buddies, this goes back to 2005, 6. My buddies would joke because they would just show me a replay and go, who was covering this race? And I could tell you because of what they showed or didn't show if it was a Fox or NBC or TNT. TNT was notorious for horrible coverage in that regard. All they ever showed you was the car hitting the wall. They never, like literally by the time they showed you the action, the car's already sideways, smoke is all over the place, and you see the front end hitting a wall, and you have no idea how it got to that point. And it sounds like we're back to that type of coverage again. And that was going to be my comparison, Mark, was Fox, what Amazon did this most recently was very similar to what Fox used to be like, in my opinion, as far as coveraging of the race within the race type of thing. And I was going to ask you, so, I mean, you could watch and noticeably see a difference. That's unfortunate. I mean, not trying to downplay your fandom, Mark, but I consider you a little more casual than not. That impacts your viewing experience. That impacts your fandom. That impacts you wanting to tune in. You're already here going, can we just go back to Amazon? Like this is kind of ruining the experience for me. And that's just a shame.
I mean,
But
put Cup on CW. Like the TNT has like been by far, and even Fox right now, I feel like really hasn't been great.
Agreed.
Xfinity coverage, I feel like, has been relatively strong, but I agree. I think Amazon has been the best this season.
Yeah, I am in total agreement with you right there, Mark. And, it's interesting you brought up the TNT broadcast because a lot of people online actually went ahead and criticized TNT for their coverage of the Chicago street race. And actually, Dale Jr. himself actually responded towards the feedback on the Dale Jr. download this week. And he was talking about how it's basically an entirely different team compared to Amazon because you remember, he's in the booth for both Amazon and for TNT this year, so he has more of an inside perspective. But he was also mentioning how that there was a bunch of staff members on that TNT team that are completely new and have not really been experienced with calling NASCAR races at these tracks before.
And the fact that we have guys like Dale coming out and saying these things, like this isn't just us complaining about this. This is widespread revolt towards who is putting on the broadcast here at this point.
He just said that they're going to take the feedback in stride and try to work on improving the broadcast, but they're aware of people not being happy with that, at least.
I do just want to point out, going back to the Xfinity race, though, for Zilich to go from the 35th position and contend for the race and get laps led, like that is, I want to see Zilich in Cup more and see if he can start because SVG is just going to run the tables here right now. I feel like with road courses, it's not a guarantee. It's not a given. It's not going to happen every single road course race, but Zilich could really take that leverage he has on his Cup placing in the future.
The talk was, Mark, that Trackhouse is going to put him in the 99. And what the thinking is similar to what SVG has done for them already is assure them a couple of drivers in the playoffs. And as we learned last year with the Austin Dillon deal, how much money that means. And I don't think the casual fan as a general rule understands the significance of the money bonus. When you talk about a difference of legitimately $1 million or more dollars, that allows these teams to self-invest, whether that be better engineers. The equipment's kind of already dictated, but there are other ways to spend that money, are other ways to generate revenue for the team, are other ways to help make the teams better. It's just like not wrecking cars helps teams get better because they're spending more time not fixing cars, but working on new cars. and tweaking what they can do. And so that money significance is big. And, if Trackhouse ends up with 2 drivers that they only end up with wins on road courses, but they end up with 3 drivers in the chase because Ross finds a way, that's massive. I mean, you're talking potentially $3 million in additional revenue or more, where somebody like Richard Childress Racing could really use that money. And right now they're on the outside looking in, right? And while Kyle can hang at these places, and he showed that, I mean, we talked about Kyle being a value and being one of the top 10 drivers, and they got to be happy with coming home with a 5th place finish. They got to be happy with Austin Hill looking good in that same equipment. Austin Dillon actually qualified well. So RCR's got a little speed somewhere. Unfortunately, it's going to be tough for them to compete on the road courses with the Ziliches and the SVGs of the world, but equipment-wise, they're there. We just got to hope and see it happens on the ovals. So there's already talk, Mark. I think we're going to see it, and I think there's already a plan, and I would argue not that someone is manipulating the playoffs. I don't think that's a fair statement, but I don't think even SVG would disagree that he's not a true playoff runner. Him getting knocked out in the first round wouldn't shock anybody, but it doesn't matter. And I always say hate the game, not the player. This is the system NASCAR set up, and maybe they're not perennial front runners for championships, but if you get into the playoffs, you help your team out. And we saw that with RFK the first year they made the playoffs. It boosted the team the following year. So,
or if you want another example, think of Wood Brothers Racing this year.
Absolutely.
Because last year they got that one win with Harrison Burton, and they made the playoffs when they were like a 30th place team the last 3 years. Now look at them. They're close to being a top 20 team this year with Josh Berry at the wheel.
And I don't want to take away from Barry. Barry definitely has an impact on that, right?
Oh, definitely.
But if you probably have seen enough of this now too, Mark. I don't care how good the car is. If you don't have the driver, you're not going to contend. I don't care how good the driver is. If you don't have the car, you're not going to contend. I don't know if it's even 50-50 today. The car may be more like 70-30 based on what I'm hearing from drivers, just because of the telemetry and how they know everybody's lines and break points and so on. The cars matter so much. So if you're telling me I can get an influx of $1 million to boost my equipment, I'm not passing it up.
From a DFS perspective, though, I feel like I had 2 takeaways from this weekend, and it really translated over into both races. But the first one is, the overpricing. Again, just a reminder that if a guy is overpriced to a certain degree, it's going to keep ownership in check. And I think
it did.
Sometimes we looked at SGG, he's this massive favorite, but he was just so overpriced that people still did not play him. And then the other element of this, or the second takeaway, is that everyone in DFS right now is just chasing place differential, and we have to do a better job of not falling into the same trap to a certain degree. Like, if you're going to have that many guys start from the back, not all of them are going to make it. So you have to pick and choose which ones, and that's the hardest part. Is the chances are not all of them will make it. And so now you have to really look into those guys starting from the back and look into each and every timeline of what's happening with those drivers in the cars. Like, the one thing that I personally missed, I'm happy to take accountability for it, was the William Byron stuff. I completely glossed over the fact that they were working on the car up until midnight the night before the race. So that if I realized some of that news that then came up on the broadcast and read into it more, maybe checked on X and some other outlets, that might have been a reason or an indicator to tell me to not play William Byron along with 65% of the field.
And see, I had the opposite take. That's interesting, Mark, because he was so fast in practice, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, Sean. He was so fast in practice, and the damage didn't look atrocious, but it did take away qualifying. I got too hell-bent on him. I did exactly what you said. I picked a guy. The problem was I picked the wrong guy. So I cashed in one of my 4 lineups or whatever. I think I did 4. And all of them, I think, had Byron in them because I was adamant since he was so fast in practice. He's been so good at COTA. He's been so good at these other road courses. I was like, this is the gimme shot. It's probably chalky, but I don't mind, like you say, eating chalk at the top. Then when I saw that all of the Hendrick cars ended up in the back, Elliott and Larson and Bowman, which Larson and Bowman still got credit for their qualifying spots, I believe. Sean, you can correct me.
That's
if I'm wrong.
correct, actually, Rich.
So
Bowman, I don't know. I think Bowman though was supposed to start 11th in that, so he moved to the back after the qualifying positions were announced. I want to say
yes, both him and Larson ended up moving to the back because of damage that they both suffered during qualifying.
So I'm all ears, Sean, because I just did it wrong. I went all Byron because of that. And looking back, we shouldn't have been afraid of SVG's number because Kyle Busch was a value. Denny Hamlin was a value still. Austin Hill, Ty Dillon. I considered a lineup with Ty Dillon because he started so far back. Not even so much chasing place differential, but I was like, if he gets 25th, man, at 5,000, like it's so cheap, right? So
yeah, both Ty Dillon paid off because he finished in the 20th spot. Even some of those really, really low drivers that we normally wouldn't even consider playing, Josh Bilicki and Catherine Legg finished 21st and 19th right there. So they both paid off as well, big time too.
So maybe you almost look at it from more of a higher level and say, hey, when you start getting this many guys starting from the back and all these place differential opportunities, now it's time to start considering 2 lineups. Now it's time to start considering 3 or even 4 to get exposure to all of them and mix and match, because maybe it's just impossible to tell which ones are going to come through and which ones aren't.
And the thing is, too, Mark, is that sometimes you can't foresee certain things, even when a team takes all that time in order to fix up a car, too, because we saw a couple of cases this past race where drivers had varying results based on them making repairs in the car. Like, for example, we saw Bowman had to repair his car. He still ended up finishing in the 8th position. Denny Hamlin had an engine expire, did not even practice and qualify. He ended up finishing in the 4th spot. But then you get somebody like William Byron this past weekend. You would not have been able to predict something like a clutch failure right on the first second
lap.
or third lap of the race right there, just from repairing all that, because they usually thoroughly check for these things too. And really, it was just an unfortunate piece of bad luck.
And you know what? Then lesson learned for me. I did 4 lineups, but I leaned on Byron too much because I tried to do what you said, Mark, is I tried to stick to my guns and go with the one instead of making sure I got exposure to all of them. And what's interesting, you bring up Bowman, Sean, because he started in the back, I automatically faded him because I'm like, he's got to earn his way just to get to his spot back. But Bowman worked. If you go look at the lineups that cashed, Bowman was in a fair amount of them because of his price point and where he finished. And this is where I think there's a little bit of a struggle for me anyway of chasing points, not necessarily place differential points, but points in general versus, I keep saying instead of places. I didn't love the Bowman top 10 bet, but I liked it with the longer odds after they moved him to the back, right? Sean, you posted that after they had already announced he was going to the back. Or I think it was you. Maybe it was. Anyway, it made sense. I understood that bet, right? But for a DFS angle, I was really wanting exposure to Bubba, to Chase. And the sad thing is that the contest I was in, the guy that won it had I had a lineup that was almost identical. He had Ross in. I built one lineup with Ross and changed it because of what you just said, Mark. I was chasing more place differential points at that dollar spot. I wanted to go contrarian with like a Hocevar or a Gibbs somewhere, but I felt like, why would I not want to get Denny's points, Elliott's points, Byron's points, Bubba's points? Denny didn't practice, but the rest of them look good in practice, Sean. I mean, at one point, Bubba was top 3 in practice times?
Yeah, he was, and he also went ahead and set the fastest single lap time during practice too. So we knew he had speed. And to be fair to Bubba, he did show it all throughout the race and even made it into the top 10. Problem was him and Bowman getting into it, and that sent Bubba all the way back in the field towards the end right there. And that's the kind of stuff you can't fully call that kind of stuff right there. Even with the big incident that happened 4 laps in with Hocevar just crashing into the wall and taking out a lot of people at once.
Like 7 cars, something like that.
What was his deal there? I never, what? Was it just a bonehead, my head's up my ass driver move right there?
As far as the Hocevar thing was concerned, I thought I saw that he smacked the wall, lost control of his tire and then just slammed into the wall and blocked a whole part of the track where barely anybody was able to get through. And that stacked about maybe 7 or 8 guys and finished all of them off.
It seemed like that turn, that whole weekend, that specific turn where he did that on too, like guys in Xfinity, everyone was having trouble with it. They were talking about how it looks. Apparently, it appears like it just really comes up on you, and it's a much sharper turn than it initially looks as a driver. And it's almost like an optical illusion.
Did you guys happen to hear Hamlin's comments on Bubba, by the way?
Which ones are you referring to?
About the finish that he didn't get.
I'm not sure if I heard those comments. Please elaborate.
So, okay, well, I'm curious if there was other comments you heard, because I'd like to hear what those are, Sean. Basically, they were interviewing Hamlin during the post-race, and he said they were asking him about the Bubba Bowman situation. And Danny basically was like, I don't know what happened, beat bang, whatever. He goes, but the thing is, at that point where you're at in the race, we need the finishes. You've got to be better about that and get the finish and let some things go. He goes, look, Bowman had new tires. Bubba did. He goes, Bowman was clearly faster. You let him go, and you live to fight another day, because battling with him was a losing battle. You're battling a guy with fresher tires. You guys are similar speed. Whether you lose a couple of spots or not, that is far better than wrecking like it ended up. And I'm paraphrasing all this, but you need to take the finish that you got and not wreck it, because more or less.
Bowman was definitely bullying him though too. Like it was a little harassing, I would say, from Bubba's perspective too.
Well, also, let's not forget, too, that these two were matched up in the in-season challenge as well, too. They were the direct matchup right there.
And Hamlin said that. He goes, and they asked him, they said, well, do you think this should play into the playoffs? He goes, I don't mind if this is playing into how you drive. Like, that's kind of the fun of the tournament. But what's the end goal? And what is more important? And making the playoffs and getting the finishes is more important than advancing in the bracket. And he just wished Bubba had. And I didn't see all of it, Mark. It won't shock me if Bowman was bullying because he had been behind him, was clearly faster, and was like, I got new tires, I need to go. And that happens a lot. And I think that's where Hamlin was coming from was, Bubba, we told you the dude had fresh tires. You're fighting an uphill battle. Let him go, get in behind him, run some nice clean laps, take care of those tires, and protect that spot. Because the 1 point you just lost is far better than the 15 you just lost us by, getting too aggressive. So I just found that interesting.
What I did see, though, was the two ended up at first they didn't talk to each other after the race right there. And then they were interviewing Bowman, and he was like, I don't know what the heck has happened. I thought we were behind this, but I guess our beef is back on. But then later on, after all the cameras were away from them and everything, the two actually found each other, talked it out, and then they came to a consensus that really they were just struggling to maintain their cars across the track, and it was just hard racing. But that's a different perspective compared to the other big run-in that happened during the race. Which we haven't even brought up yet. The run-in between Ross Chastain and Joey Logano. You guys saw that?
What happened? I just didn't hear or see this. What happened? Lay it on me, Sean.
So what happened was that they were racing right there. The pack was getting bunched up, and cars were making dive bombs into each other. And particularly, it was Austin Cindric. He got into his teammate Joey Logano and Kyle Larson. And then in turn, that bounced Ross Chastain off the wall right there, and he did a spin. But Ross, thinking that Joey was the one that pile drove him into there, then on the very next corner, drove straight up into Joey and then bumped him out of the way and spun him out on purpose. And Ross admitted it on the radio that it was on purpose.
Fine incoming.
If he didn't admit it, would he have gotten fined? I mean, he had to have already known he's getting fined at that point.
So what happened after that, though, was that then the two, funny enough, they finished right next to each other in finishing position. So when they got on pit road, Joey was steaming and directly confronted Ross to be like, what's going on? And Ross was like, you got into me. Well, I spun into you on purpose because you got into me.
Honestly, Mark, if they leave a little bit of plausible deniability, you don't the action has to look egregious. So maybe it looked egregious enough like Austin Cindric at Coda type of thing. But I'm of the opinion, do the Kyle Edwards approach. I lost control of the steering wheel. I didn't mean to do it.
Yeah. I can't admit. I mean, so the last thing I will just say about the race was the commentators on the broadcast during Cup at the beginning of the race, they were talking about, because all these guys started having issues. Not only was it McDowell, but we saw Buescher fall way back because every single one of these guys was having some sort of internal issue. And I forget who was talking about on the broadcast, but they're just like, yeah, it's because the roads are like everyone's cars are falling apart because it's way too bumpy and they can't pave a good road for this because it's in the streets of Chicago. He didn't obviously say that directly, but he was about the roads, and then you could tell there was almost like a directive to pull it back and stop doing that. So it was abundantly clear that even the broadcast, the true feelings were that this course is not meant for a NASCAR race. This setup everyone's cars are falling apart. So it wasn't even fun to watch at the end of the day because no one could keep a car intact.
There's a lot of split opinions.
Bring back Chicagoland.
Yeah, I agree with that. But there's a lot of split opinions between the drivers loving or hating this racetrack. You got some like SVG, and you have some like, say, Ty Gibbs, who absolutely love this track. Then there are others that are just like, this track. Can we go anywhere else?
Well, to be fair, SVG and Ty Gibbs are similar in that they haven't been in the sport very long. They have no concept of how the cars used to feel when they didn't beat the crap out of you. Everybody talks about how sensitive this car is on the bumps, whether we're at the ovals or anywhere else. So to be kind of a jerk here, they don't know any better, especially Gibbs, who's young. Sorry, bro. You don't know any better, bro. So
you saw his comments, right? You saw his comments, Rich?
Yeah. Yeah. And look, he's had a lot of success there, so he should like it. But I'm telling you, Ty, you don't trust me. There's better days ahead, man.
For context, and I'm going to bring this up for Mark right here, but they were interviewing Ty Gibbs, actually, the media, and they were asking him about what would you think about if they got rid of Chicago. And Ty Gibbs was like, no, I want them to keep Chicago, and I want them to keep San Diego as well. Let's bring 2 street races and get rid of the second Atlanta date.
Well, and
that's not going to go
please no. Oh, my God. Well, and to Rich's point too, it's like then NASCAR has to change the structure or something because you can't add another road course, retain Chicago, and then only have one road course in the playoffs. Like it just doesn't make any sense.
It's NASCAR. Nothing makes sense.
Well, either way, NASCAR themselves are going to have to make a decision, especially because the city of Chicago has already openly expressed that they don't mind this race coming back, but they want it at a different point in the season.
Yeah, I mean, you're shutting down the city of Chicago on the 4th of July for the race, like on a track where no one's cars can stay intact, and it rains every year.
Although,
it did start raining during post-race. Like, I saw the droplets on the camera, and I'm like, well, we still got rain.
Yeah, it just happened after the race, but it was very close. It was very close.
In true NASCAR fashion, that wasn't the only kind of crazy NASCAR news this week, was it, Sean?
But before we get on into any NASCAR news and all that, though, there is one final point that I do want to revisit about the Cup race in particular, and that's the Cody Ware incident, which, by the way, we do know that they did not show that on TV, but apparently NASCAR didn't see it too well either because this was pointed on Twitter that it took NASCAR officials about 35 seconds before they threw the yellow flag for Cody Ware. And within that time, had they thrown it out sooner, the race would have went into overtime instead of ending on their caution right there, which classic case of NASCAR officiating it.
It was because of the weather.
Sean,
I swear.
Don't bury the lead here. Ware was on the radio complaining about pain and whatnot.
Yeah, which they have access to those radio communications.
Right. So here it is. The dude, I mean, you guys have all seen it, but anyone who hasn't, homeboy flew straight into the tire barrier. When I say straight, like the car did not slow down, did not turn. Nope. He buried it nose. And kudos to him because he didn't bury it into other cars. He actively drove it to the outside and said, this is going to hurt, and just ran it into the wall. And then he comes over the radio, and you can tell he's in serious discomfort from the audio I heard. And like you said, Sean, NASCAR has access. Everybody has access to the NASCAR channel, the drivers, and NASCAR has access to them because they will come, driver 14, you must pull up. You have been black flagged. They communicate directly to them. So, this, Sean, you said typical NASCAR. This inconsistency with the flags bothers me because I appreciate not wanting all the overtimes and all of that. But the whole reason we don't race back to the caution is safety. Dude was in pain. We needed to get him out of that freaking car.
There was more than enough time to call it right there just to get right to him instantly. There were officials on the track waving flags, seeing the car right there. NASCAR had access to all the cameras right there in order to see the incident. They just simply were like, oh, we wanted to give him time to pull out. He made it very clear on the radio he's not going to be able to pull out. You should have just thrown it out right there.
It seemed obvious, though. They wanted him to get the white flag so that because the weather was, you could see it. Like, it was on one side of the city. They were showing aerial shots. It was coming down, raining. And on the side of the city where the track was, it wasn't. And it was like 100 yards in the distance. Like you said, in the post race, interview, it started raining when he kicked the rugby ball into the stand. So I think they just wanted to wait till they get back. And,
I agree.
Because it's a road course, they were like, well,
totally
no one's going to come by.
I totally think so, Mark. Even though they went out and said, oh, no, that did not play into our decision. Bull totally did.
I love when they insult our intelligence. Like, we haven't watched you do this for the last 40 years. Like we can't predict some of this stuff? Come on.
They got me fired up now, Rich. They actually got me fired up.
I can tell you're fired up. Can we handle the news, Sean? Or is the news going to get you more fired? Because I really wanted your take on the news, to be honest with you.
Well, the news stories aren't going to get me as fired up as Chicago, thankfully, because, there's at least some stuff here, Rich. I'm like, okay, I can understand this. This I don't understand, Rich. I don't get it.
Well, again, it's a safety thing, right? I mean, I don't care how good the end of the race is. That wreck looks scary. And honestly, Sean, do you remember when I think it was McDuffie, right?
Yeah, McDuffie at
Watkins Glen. It looked very similar to that, right? The throttle stuck and he flew right into the barrier. The only difference was both cars went in the barrier. He got airborne. The car went under him and he landed on his roof. And I get that significantly different, but we lost McDuffie that day. And so when I see cars fly into tire barriers with no brakes, I'm not going to lie, Sean, I get concerned and nervous because we've seen it. The cars go under the tires, hit the wall, stop, and they're in the tires. They can't get out. They're surrounded. Like, it's a scary and dangerous situation. And what was Ty Gibbs going to do to SVG? Let's be honest. What was really going to happen?
He was not going to get there in time. I'll say that much.
Well,
but we do have two news stories lined up today. Moving on right here. Let's get into the first one here with NASCAR officially announcing that they are going to return to Bowman Gray for the 2026 clash right there. We talked to... Yeah, there we go.
Sorry.
So they made it official today, and we suspected that this was going to happen for a while. Now it's officially confirmed that we are going to be able to at least have another clash race at Bowman Gray. So we all thought that the first race at Bowman Gray was a pretty interesting event overall, and now we get to roll it back for another year. So first thoughts on it being confirmed, guys?
I'm good with it. Yeah.
I'll
take it over the Coliseum.
100%.
As do I too. So
did you happen to see the Bowman Gray incident from not that long ago when the son-father incidents happened and dude went running across the track and then jumped through the windshield?
That was something.
Remind me sometime off the air, Mark. I'll tell you, see if I can send you the video of it. Quick synopsis. Racing for the lead, coming down to the end. Seems like a lap car's block, and turns out the lap car is the father or the son of the guy leading, and the other person chasing him is the daughter of somebody else. Well, they didn't appreciate how it went down. and there was some fisticuffs, and dude literally went running. It's a fat dude. I think he's smoking a cigarette on the way even, and jumps feet first into the windshield of the car.
Oh my God.
It is wild, Mark.
But Sean, am I wrong? That's Bowman Gray. Like, that's nothing uncommon about Bowman Gray. Like, it is known for craziness like that.
Yeah, they don't call it the Madhouse for nothing.
Bingo.
Sounds fun.
So getting into our other news story that did pop up today, I know there's one other big one that's been ongoing, but I do want to see what happens with that one for next week, since that will affect next week's race. But in the meantime, there's this other smaller story that did come up too that we should address right here. Greg Van Alst, he opens a new part-time Truck Series team that will be participating in 4 races this year, starting at IRP. So something to keep a note of right there is that we got another new team, Greg Van Alst Motorsports. They're going to be the number 35 truck driving in Toyota. They're going to be doing 4 races this year, and then they're going to expect to expand in 2026 right there. Now, since you're the truck guy, Rich, I want to get your synopsis on this real quick.
Why does that name look really familiar to me, Sean? That's where I'm stuck.
He's done a bunch of part-time starts within both Trucks and Xfinity all throughout this year.
My thought process, this is a Dodge team.
That's what I was just about to say.
They're launching now so they can get the groundwork, the team, the building, all the nuts and bolts that goes into this stuff. If they're already announcing their plans to go full-time racing, this is our Dodge team.
Even though it says that they're Toyotas right now.
Yes, but there is no Dodge right now. So they'd either have to be Ford, Toyota, or Chevy. I believe Toyota probably has the most reasonable support from a cost standpoint, trucks available to buy, all that sort of stuff, just because of the sheer numbers in the series, the Tricon, Toyota support, all of that. I mean, I don't know if he's got any links. I'll have to, like I said, I'm going to go look up the name because I missed this news story, Sean. So I'll look up the name before the trucks go racing again and find out when he did race, who he raced with, all of that. See if I can just dig some general info up, because I looked at that name. I'm like, that looks really, really familiar, and I'm trying to place why. I don't remember if I was in on him one week or faded him or what, but I got to believe this is a precursor to a Dodge team, because it recently came out that everything that was linked to the Dodge team, the team came out and said, yeah, no. So we know Dodge is coming truck race in 2026. We know they need a team. This screams, yeah, we're running Toyota now. And I mean, there's another Toyota team at Cup that's being quite widely circulated as looking at Dodge. So I'm not saying there's necessarily overlap, but it's just something interesting to note.
I do think as far as that connection is concerned, I think my suspicions is basically following up on an earlier rumor that we hit on one of the previous podcast episodes with the return of GMS Racing maybe being back with Dodge for next year. And one of the owners of GMS was Maury Gallagher, who was also associated with Legacy Motor Club, which I'm sure that's the team you were thinking of from Toyota. Yes. That's maybe going to think about Dodge as well, which also wouldn't be out of the question, because technically that used to be the Petty team, and we all know that Petty is heavily associated with Dodge in the past too.
Well, and like we've said before, Legacy not being linked with any other Toyota teams, being on an island, they need some extra support somehow. I'm impressed with how much they've improved without any of that support. And Dodge is going to need at least 1 or 2 teams. I'm assuming there's going to be at least 2 that make a move, and they may, if they're smart, they would find a way to get them to work together like Toyota has with some of their teams in the past. And it screams to me that I think you're going to see Jimmy Johnson and Legacy go Dodge.
There's 3 teams that I think could really go Dodge that are in Cup right now. Legacy is one of them. I think Trackhouse is another. And I do think the third could be RFK.
Man, with Jack Roush still alive? I mean, the Cat in the Hat is like a diehard blue oval guy. I'm not going to say you're wrong, Sean, because I have no idea, but that one would shock me. I could see more like a Colleague or a Spire making that move.
I think they're both going to stick with Chevy as it stands right now.
Okay.
Although there is a chance that Kaulig could definitely switch. But I don't think Spire's going to be switching when they're now the number 2 Chevy team.
They are linked with Hendrick. And Roush, like Legacy, is kind of on an island as far as the Ford camps go, right? I mean, that, front row has basically said, we're tier 2 behind Penske. It's like, well, what's RFK? It's just Jack Roush has Jack Roush ever not been with Ford?
As far as I know, I don't think they've gone away from Ford for whenever he's been the main guy running the team. But that's the thing. He's not the only main guy running that team right now, too.
All right. It's just Brad would do it. Brad's not dumb. He's going to do what makes business sense.
And he also would have a relationship with Dodge before because, I mean,
that's right.
he won his only Cup title win at Dodge, too.
That's right. I forgot he was because that's when he was with Penske. And actually, he ran a Dodge truck, I believe, too.
Yes.
Good point, Sean. Good point. You're selling me on it.
It's not out of the question, especially because I know Brad's going to be looking for any angle in order to get a technical edge, too.
I appreciate not doing the other news story today, and so we can move on. But I do want to make sure you save us some time to talk about that news story next week because I think it's massively impactful.
Yeah, I think it's something that I think we're definitely going to get in discussion about next week when we definitively know what they're going to do with that. There's still an element to it that's uncertain.
That's fair. That's fair. It's not really worth talking about until we get some of that, but it's definitely worth watching. We'll watch it for everybody. If you don't know what we're talking about, it's legal lawsuit stuff. It's really not worth digging into, but we will reserve time next week to discuss.
Yeah, definitely for sure. But that's why we only put in these 2 news stories today because these are current and this is exactly what is happening right now in NASCAR to keep track of. So with that in mind, let's turn the corner over to Sonoma and preview Sonoma Raceway. We're going road racing again, but instead of it being on streets, we're now in a closed circuit that's made for road course racing. So we may
with wide passing zones.
Whoa! It is.
Sonoma puts on Sonoma puts. I don't care if it's IMSA. I don't care if it's Cup. I have yet to see anything run at Sonoma, and frankly, Watkins Glen. I remember Riverside barely as a kid, and I think it's bummed that it's gone. But Watkins Glen and Sonoma put on some good road races. We have had some incredible finishes at both of those courses. And you know what? We've never raced them back to back. So this whole Chicago to Sonoma thing just makes me want to puke, but whatever. I'm excited. I will be more invested this week than last weekend for sure.
Let's put it this way. I think having the racing at the Chicago street course this past weekend is just going to make you appreciate Sonoma more.
100%.
So
yeah. And I think the silver lining with the Chicago race to go into Sonoma is the fact that it's going to be the same style of DFS. So we've gotten a little bit of practice from last week going into this week. And if anything, maybe less issues with cars falling apart after the first lap.
Yeah. Even though it's not out of the question entirely, Mark, because there are at least 2 zones where that could still just as likely occur, too.
Yeah.
Did they fix the pavement, though?
I'm not so sure if they did. I'd have to look that up and follow that up.
After we started talking about it, it just dawned on me. After they did the repave, they screwed up some of it. And there was some problems with 2 different parts of the track with the repave. So I will have to dig into that as well. I forgot about that part of it. But we're not doing the carousel, right?
I don't believe we are.
I'm not run the boot, run the carousel. I'm not on that plan.
So for those that are not familiar, Sonoma has multiple different course layouts, and then there's one that involves a famous section called the boot, and then there's another that involves a famous section called the carousel, and they basically run the track. The way that the track goes is entirely different depending on which layout is chosen. So that's something.
Isn't the boot at Watkins
there.
Glen? I didn't think they had a boot at Sonoma, but maybe they do. I know there's like 4 different configurations, but regardless, the carousel's a big, long, winding turn. Think of like a carousel you go around. That's where it's named after. And we ran it for 2 years, and I got to tell you, Sean,
I think that's why they're going back to the classic layout here, I think, for this week. So
good.
That's something to keep in mind. That could affect us reading into the data a little bit and maybe put a little bit less stake into it. But even so, the rest of the course is still going to be similar, and drivers still handle it very similarly. So we got another road course. We got another track where the lap count is not going to be as big in order to deal with. So dominators don't hold as much power here for DFS purposes. But place differential and finishing position certainly will, just like last week. So that's something that we got to keep in mind. And as far as the betting is concerned, we do have one very, very strong favorite as emphasized by the books, which we'll get into later. But this is also not a bad track that if you wanted to maybe throw out a few longer shot bets, not a bad week in order to do so, that they might have a legit chance in order to steal away a win right there. I mean, you think back towards a few years ago, I know Daniel Suarez, when he won at Sonoma, it was not an obvious winner, and he was down there as far as betting odds was concerned too. So do not be afraid to shoot a little deeper this week in betting.
Fuel mileage could be a factor again.
It's true. We've seen it be a factor before. Think back towards, I think, maybe 2 years ago when Larson won, and then he was trying to beat out Truex, but then Truex was just hanging on for dear life because of fuel. There you go.
Well, remember Jamie McMurray when he got his win back when?
I forgot about the circumstances of that one exactly.
He short pitted. I could be wrong. Maybe it was Watkins Glen, but I thought it was Sonoma because he was notorious. I think he was in the 26 at the time. I could be wrong. This is going back a ways, but if I remember correctly, he came to pit road on lap 3 so that they could basically only do one more pit stop for the race. And it worked out because back then we didn't have the stage brakes. So it'll be a little different, obviously, with the stage brakes. We don't see that as much anymore. But after he did that, we saw multiple teams do the same strategy because what they basically did was rob themselves of a pit stop they had to do, or at least have themselves enough fuel. And he hung out there and just continued on. And like I said, maybe I'm getting McMurray confused with one of the other drivers at the time. But we will see different pitting strategies because they're going to short pit to get the track position after the stages, especially the teams that aren't chasing stage points, right? If they're looking for a win, I got to believe we're going to see a lot of drivers with 2 laps to go before the stage come in, get fuel, get tires, especially that last stage break, right? And because it's going to be all about track position.
So trying to get guys on the same strategies is going to be pretty important to keep an eye out for as well. Maybe identifying all the guys, right? Like maybe it's not the same team, but identifying all of the drivers who you think will short pit because they already have wins or, something like that, or vice versa.
I was going to say, I think it's probably drivers chasing wins, Sean. Would you agree with that?
I would say it is drivers definitely chasing wins, but I also think that the drivers that are going to take the stage points are either going to be drivers that are towards that cutoff line where they're going to be very close on making it in on points, or drivers that do have a win but don't think that they like their chances at winning, kind of like a Ryan Blaney or a Joey Logano situation, which we saw even during Chicago. Blaney took that playoff point because he knows that road racing is not a strong suit at Chicago, for example.
No, and he's fine with the top 10, top 15 type finish, right? I think that's a very valid point on the strategy. And to Mark's point, I think that's a very savvy angle to take a look because I'm sitting here going, Mark, I think that's brilliant, but I don't know how to tell you who's going to have the strategies. But as we sit here and think about it, I got to believe, Ty Gibbs.
Kyle Busch.
Ty Gibbs and Kyle Busch, they're both going to be having win on their minds.
Busher,
right?
Reddick.
Busch, yeah. I mean, Reddick, because he's near the cutoff. That one's going to be interesting because they interviewed Reddick after this race, and he talked about just needing the points because he is 40 to the good, roughly. And Kyle Busch.
Reddick is far ahead. Buscher's closer to the cutoff.
Oh, maybe it's Buscher was 40 ahead. I would say there was 2 of them that were right there, about 39 and 40 points ahead. And then Kyle Busch was 45 points, I believe, under. So to your point, Kyle has to get a win. And so I got to believe Stage points don't mean crap to him. Carson Hocevar, he needs a win, right? Like he thinks he's got a playoff shot. That's the only way he's going to be able to do it. Danny's probably going to take the stage points. Kyle Larson's probably going to take the stage points.
All right, I got the playoff standings right here. Let me share this on screen for a second if I can get it up. Okay, there we go. That's what the playoff picture currently looks like. I don't know if you guys can see it, but
I blew it up. Okay, so I was getting Reddick is 143, so he's way ahead. So I was thinking Bowman and Buescher, because Bowman doesn't have a win yet, does he? So
no, he does not.
So Bowman, I can almost guarantee you Bowman's going to be on that strategy, right? To your point, Buescher probably. Bubba Wallace probably. Ryan Preece. Dinger, because this is probably about the last shot Dinger sees as a viable win for him outside of a super speedway.
Well, he still has Watkins Glen after this because that's not in the playoffs. That's just before the playoffs.
Oh, that's right.
Too.
That's right. So, but he's running out of chances, right? Ty Gibbs, definitely. He needs a win, and they've been showing speed. And after the success of this weekend, I gotta believe that's exactly what they want to do, Sean.
Yeah, if I was to take a look at this picture and you told me which guys are going to focus on getting a win over points, I mean, all of them obviously want to win, but the ones that are going to definitely go for the win, I could definitely see Reddick going for it. I can see Buescher considering it. Right. I do think that Bowman, Wallace, and Preece are just going to go for points. I think Allmendinger, Kyle Busch, and Eric Jones and Ty Gibbs, anybody from there on down is going to go think about win. That's for sure.
Win only.
And this could be the way of identifying which place differential guys we're going after versus the ones we're not.
Oh, good call out. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for pulling that up. That's a really good point. And like I said, Mark, I think your point, if we can kind of narrow down the strategy, I think that's a brilliant approach.
There's a lot that plays into it, though. We got, one thing I will say in the Discord that I'm seeing is I'm seeing some people asking about lineups before qualifying is even official, and it's like okay, yeah, it looks good, but let's talk about it a little bit more once qualifying's in.
We get that some people are excited and want to lock their lineups in early, or maybe they're like, oh, I can't be there race day, but best time in order to lock DFS lineups in is right after qualifying is done when we got all the info in hand.
Yeah, and
or
you get emotionally invested in those plays, so then you don't want to move off of them, and you convince you fall in love with the guys no matter where they're starting, and then you convince yourself it's still a good play afterwards.
Well, I did the opposite with Denny Hamlin this week, right? Because I try not to do that, Mark. I try to be very conscious of that bias, and I went. This is where I'm like, I still feel like it should be fine, but the dude didn't practice at all, like the car engine. And I even told the wife, if this was on an oval and this was 15 years ago, I would have doubled my bet to Denny to win because, man, it was like clockwork. If you replaced the motor when nobody else replaced the motor, I was willing to bet you $100 that was the fastest car on the track that day because it had less miles on it than all the other motors. And the way those engineers and mechanics would tune the motors, that car might blow up at one lap after the finish, but it was going to be tweaked to the extreme. You can't really do that with these cars. And so I got, half pregnant on it, but that's a very good point. Honestly, it's not much different than when people ask us sit on Tuesdays. So I'm with you guys. Like, it's a waste of time. I get when you travel, you want to get a rough idea, but here's the deal. Almost don't do a lineup then. If you can't at least adjust it post-qualifying to Sean's point or the morning of when we hear about drivers getting moved to the back, you're really setting yourself up at a disadvantage.
Yep, it's just like how Jeff Mans emphasized during NFL season that sometimes you got to swap players out in the middle of the NFL slate in order to really get the best edge on the competition. That applies here too. So keep that in mind right there. Before we continue on and start to, first of all, just as a refresher, third round of the in-season challenge, and then we also got to get through the driver list of the open teams and part-timers right here because we didn't really gloss over that last week due to time constraints, but let's get that in this week right here. So trucks are currently off, so that leaves the Xfinity Series. Rich, do you want to lead us off with this one?
I sure can, although I did not have it handy because I forgot. But I will have it here in just a second. I do know that, again, we have some road course ringers because every time we go to Sonoma, we get road course ringers. So they need to be pointed out at the very least. Alex LeBay is back in the SS Greenlight Late Racing number 07. And, of course, we get to see SVG back in the number 9 JIRM car, Connor Mozak in the number 14 SS Greenlight Racing truck or car, Corey Day, who I'm excited to see because he's a dirt racer by trade. I told you guys I met him at the high limit race. I'm really curious to see how he does in the number 17 Hendrick Motorsports because historically that car has done really well here. Riley Hurst and the number 19 Joe Gibbs Racing Machine, do not sleep on him for this race. Austin Green, the number 32 Jordan Racing vehicle, which Jordan Anderson struggled this past week, which was shocking. I expected Balicki to do well in that 91. I think it was number 91. But he was in a Jordan different team. Who was in the Jordan race? Who was in the Jordan Anderson machine that blew up? Because I was shocked by that.
You may have been thinking of what's his name? Why am I blanking on his name? It starts with a B.
Because Brad Perez, who's back in the number 45 Alpha Prime, it'll come to us. Austin J. Hill, not to be confused with the other Austin Hill, number 35 Joey Gase Motorsports. Sage Cameron's back with Joey Gase as well in number 53. Will Rogers, not the singer, but the driver, in the number 70 Cope Family Racing Machine. And Josh Balicki is back with DGM Racing number 91. That's who he was with last week.
Yeah, that was the team right there. So there's going to be 39 entries in the Xfinity Series for 38 spots, which means one driver is going to go home after qualifying. So do keep that in mind for this week with the Xfinity Series. And as for the Cup Series, there's only just one open part-time entry, and that's Catherine Legg rolling it back with the number 78 at Live Fast Motorsports, which, again, she did end up finishing in the 19th position this past week at Chicago. So I don't think she's going to be as strong this week, but I do think that maybe, just maybe, there's a small chance you can consider it if she's at the very back to start.
She has run an IMSA car here, hasn't she?
I believe you may be correct about that, Rich. So I don't think it's her first time seeing this track at all.
No, I feel like she's run some races here. I'll have to look that up, but I was pretty confident about that, to be honest.
I feel like she's always due for a spin out. Like, I think she spun out even last weekend, too. She just hung in the race while everyone else wrecked ahead of her. I don't know if that's going to happen as much at Sonoma.
I wouldn't predict it, but it's not out of the question. I'll say that much. But before we continue on and get into our little driver picks, as a reminder, we are part of FantasyGuru.com. There's a lot of sports packages in order to help you get ready for many different sports that the Fantasy Guru covers, including NFL. There's many various NFL packages that are available, and some are even discounted as long as you hit up support at FantasyGuru.com. The MLB content is still available right there. You can get the guide with that. And there's other various packages, including MVP, Platinum, VIP, or All In, which even include all the other different sports, including the rest of our coverage for NASCAR right there. Again, hit up support at FantasyGuru.com in order to get the best possible deal. And if you're enjoying the show, be sure to like, comment, or if you're on YouTube, be sure to even subscribe so that way you'll get notified as soon as new episodes of the pod drop on YouTube. So that should cover it right there. Let's get into our driver picks. So I'm just going to say this much because I know I've seen Mark's picks before going into the show today, that one of the themes for today is that Mark and I are going to be nearly overlapping a lot today with some small differences here and there. So that right there should tell you something.
Yeah, I think a lot of our picks are data driven too. And, again, at this point in the week, it's, past history and, what type of courses these guys are good at. So, again, take it with a grain of salt. It's not like we're locked in on these guys, but these are the guys with the initial indicators. These are some of the initial green lights as we progress into the weekend.
great to note right there, Mark. So I'm going to get into my first three. Well, technically it's 4 drivers that I'm pushing in the top price section this week, because this is another week where I have a split pick depending on the site you play. So the 2 drivers I have on both sites are Shane Van Gisbergen and Chris Buescher. We know Shane is good on any road course. He's a road course killer. That much we know. And as for Chris Buescher, outside of Watkins Glen, where he won, this might be his best road course in order to drive. He is super consistent at Sonoma. I mean, he's the only driver to score 3 top 5s in the last 3 Sonoma races right there. So he's never finished worse than 4th in that span. He's really great at this track. So I like him a lot this week. But as for the split pick, I'm going with Michael McDowell on DraftKings and Chase Elliott on FanDuel. Both 2 drivers that are really great on their own, especially McDowell. He's been top 10, and so is Chase Elliott. They've both been top 10 in the last 3 Sonoma races as well. But McDowell, he's been especially close to winning at this track before. Elliott, he's won here before as well. Both of these drivers should be primed up for some really strong days. My difference between them is that McDowell is cheaper between the 2 on DraftKings, whereas Elliott's cheaper between the 2 on FanDuel. So that's where the split comes in right there.
Yeah, and I'll add just maybe from a different angle with these guys. So I got SVG, McDowell, and Buescher. SVG, so, it might be hard to repeat another Cup win this weekend, but obviously he's a strong player when it comes to any type of road course. And we also have to consider, I think this is 110 laps at Sonoma versus 75 or something, or what was it, 75 or I think 75 at Chicago. Yep. So there are, even though it's, we don't have to be so locked in on dominators, just know that he can get a little bit of an extra chance at some lead laps and some of those premium points. So even if he starts first on the pole, he gets a lot, like 60% of the lead laps in the race and finishes in 5th place. That could be a little bit more than Chicago to accommodate for losing some of those places in the top 5. So, that's why I don't mind SVG. And then McDowell and Buescher, the thing about those 2 is, again, it's recency bias. McDowell and Buescher both had engine or throttle issues. They had some sort of internal issue that were caused by those streets in Chicago. I'm going to chalk it up to that. Both of these guys, for all the reasons that Sean said, are road course warriors. And I think these 2 can probably go a little bit, even though both of us are on him. And I think even, Rich, you're liking McDowell and Buescher as well. I think even though we all like them, I don't know if the ownership is truly going to follow because of the recency bias from what happened last weekend. So give me McDowell and Buescher because they're probably going to qualify pretty high, keep their ownership in check.
One other small secondary note on SVG in particular, he's never driven a Cup car at this place before, but he has been here in the Xfinity Series where he has won before. So do keep that in mind if you are going to use SVG. He has no experience at this place in a Cup car.
No, but he will be getting double work this weekend in the Xfinity car, just like he did last weekend. So I think that helps a little bit.
I do think that it also does too. Just letting the audience know to make sure that they have all the facts, because I think that's important.
Well, and in all fairness, before the show, I said this, if I was looking to fade SVG, and I'm strongly considering it, this is the place I want to do it, because there is a long history of other drivers with success here, particularly drivers we don't necessarily think of with road racers and having success here. So there's something to be said, and I found it interesting. SVG was a little cheaper this week than last week. But look, we've talked about it too, Sean. I would almost prefer if he was driving the truck here versus the Xfinity car. I feel like the truck and the Cup cars overlap a little bit more, but there is something to at least being here. I think he's a little bit more at a disadvantage, and I do think the ownership will be up on a recency bias. I think it's worthwhile to consider him. Right now, I do have SVG listed, but I listed 4 guys because I'm in on Reddick. He showed speed this weekend. He was, during his interview, you could tell they kind of have a plan for this race. This Sonoma race, they know that, yeah, we're 100 points to the good, but one DNF can really hurt us. Not to mention, he's kind of close to locked in, but we're far enough away from the playoffs that without a win, it's no guarantee. And this is a good place for him to win at. And he has history to do so. So I really want to get Reddick in my lineups, depending on how practice and qualifying goes. I think it's worth noting that McDowell has been very good here. He struggled at certain road tracks. This isn't one. This is one he's done particularly well in. They had speed last weekend, like you guys mentioned, the equipment failure. And you both kind of sold me on Buescher. You really did. Like, I did not realize that he hasn't really been worse than fourth over that time period that you gave, Sean. At his price point, he's not overly priced, right?
Yeah.
I could be talked into Gibbs, but Buescher is cheaper enough that unless Gibbs really, like, when we get done with practice, I'm like, man, I want some action on Gibbs. I don't know that I want to pay the extra $500-$700 to get him, because I feel like you need to be stars and scrubs this week. There's not as much in the middle. Our middle guys aren't as valuable this week. Like, Kyle Busch is a little more expensive. Denny Hamlin's a little more expensive. Brad's priced down a little bit, but he's not really a target. While Hamlin and Busch I would use. Ross is a little more expensive. So I'm kind of with you guys. And I do think, like I said, when we talked before the show, bring up a very good point that he hasn't been here and everybody else in this Cup car has. That matters. And the fact that he hasn't had the seat time, like I said, I just wanted to mention he is in Xfinity, so that'll help, right? He's not alone. Riley Hurst is doing both, right? So let's keep that in mind.
And Riley hasn't been here too in a Cup car either.
No, but he hadn't been in Chicago in a Cup car either, had he?
You are correct about that too. He also wasn't in the Cup car then before that race.
And I thought he looked pretty freaking good, to be honest. The little bit I saw, I was shocked where he was at in the lineup or in the rundown, whatever you want to call it.
The final finishing positions, he ended up sneaking away with a 17th place run at Chicago right there.
He was top 10 at one point.
Yeah. Riley is kind of underrated as a little bit of a road racer. He can pick up on these sorts of skills too. And even at Mexico City before he got turned around, he was right there in the thick of the top 15, getting close to the top 10.
That's why I just found that interesting, which we'll get into our values a little bit later. But that's where I'm at. And there's a lot of overlap with you guys. I think you guys are onto something with McDowell and recency bias. I have a feeling his ownership will be down a little bit.
One other honorable mention I'm going to shout out is the Dinger, AJ Allman Dinger, just because he's at 8,800 on DraftKings, and that's a pretty interesting price point for AJ this week. And even at FanDuel, he's 9,500, which is just below the average salary price. So he might be another one that I think we're going to have to watch, especially because even this past weekend at Chicago, he went away and was even looking to be top 5 at a couple points, but he finished in the 6th position. So keep that in mind too.
Better than I thought he would. And he's a little bit cheaper this week.
This is also a good track for him too.
Is this not kind of a home track for him, Sean? Isn't he a California boy?
I believe you may be correct about that. I'm just going to look that up to be sure.
Well, Mark, why don't you hit us with your, while Sean's looking at that, why don't you hit us with your.
Yep, it is.
It is.
He's a Cali boy.
That's what I thought. I got a thing for these storylines, man. I can't help myself.
So there you go. But hit us with your mid-tier drivers, Mark. Let's get into it.
Yeah, I went ahead and I'm pulling the trigger on Ross Chastain, $8,400, Kyle Busch, $8,000, and Austin Cindric. I just did a last-minute pivot here. I was on the fence between him and Suarez leading into the show, but I think Cindric poses a little bit more place differential opportunity with less risk. I feel like Suarez just makes me feel a little uneasy. But that might just be PTSD from previous spots where I've rostered him this season. So, but Chastain and Busch, I mean, both of these guys, Chastain has in the next gen car finished in the top 10 each of the 3 races that he's participated in. Kyle Busch, Ever since he's been driven a Chevy, he's knocking down top 10s. He'd probably even have higher ratings if that first race in the next gen car wasn't a 30th finish. So I think Kyle Busch is also driving just pretty kind of under the radar, but a lot better as of recent. So I'm liking him a lot, especially at the $8,000 price point. But Austin Cindric, $7,400. He has placed positive place differential in each of the 3 races that he's participated in for Team Penske. There's a chance that we see him qualify in the mid 20s to even potentially low 30s and land a top 20 or a top 15 at $7,400. I certainly think you could do well in that spot.
Nice. I like those call outs a lot, but I mean, I also like them because I pretty much almost overlap entirely with you right there. I'm also on Ross Chastain a lot. He has 4 top 10 finishes in the last 4 Sonoma races right there. So even before they switched into the next gen car, he's been good here too. And Kyle Busch, when it comes to road course tracks, Sonoma might be his best one because he's won here more than once in his Cup career before. And even when he switched to RCR, he's still been running pretty good at this track overall too. So equipment doesn't matter as much for Kyle for him in order to do well here. And when you leave it up to just driver skill, this is a track that favors Kyle Busch right there. I like him a lot right as it stands. And then as for my last driver, I did almost consider Austin Cindric. Really, he was just very close to being on my list as well. But in the end, I decided to go with his teammate, Ryan Blaney. I think Blaney's not going to have as much DFS attention on him, but Blaney is the sort of driver that you would like to have in a track like this because he's been quietly, relatively consistent in his Cup career at this track. In 8 total starts, he has about 5 top 10 finishes, including 4 of the last 5 Cup races at this particular track. And he's always qualified either towards the top 10 or 15, so he may end up being a tournament play if that happens again. But history does point towards Blaney being a driver that I think should not be overlooked this week.
And he, like you said, he's $7,500 on DK, so it's like same story as what you were talking about, Rich, earlier on the show with him in Chicago. Is he might just be going for a pretty nice, points day. You might not get a win out of him, but at $7,500, if he gives you like an 11th place and he qualifies, 16th or something like that, that's all you need out of a $7,500 driver.
I totally agree. And I'm going a little bit different approach on the mid-tier. I mean, there's some overlap with you guys. I want Kyle Busch and Alex Bowman because I think both are chasing wins. And I think they're going to do everything they can for the wins. They need them. They're both capable of winning here. We've seen Bowman win on road courses. We saw the good finish this past weekend. We just talked about Kyle Busch in that same boat. And then the contrarian to that would be Denny Hamlin, where I think that's a guy that, like Blaney, like some of these other guys we talked about, just wants a good points day. So because of his price point, I'm really struggling not considering him again. I know Denny's not necessarily a road racer, but what happened at Chicago is what I was trying to kind of hit home last week is that he's better than he gets credit for. And the data didn't really support the numbers last week. It was skewed because of one bad finish, 2 good qualifying runs, 1 good finish, 1 bad finish. To be priced as low as he was, he's not nearly that low this week. So I could see myself pivoting elsewhere because if he is just going for a points day and he qualifies 12th, 10th to 15th, he's fine with, especially if he's just looking to get the stage points and knows he's going to go back at the end of the pack and he's going to have to just take care of it. And unlike Bubba, he understands the concept of taking care of his equipment and just get the finishes that are there for him. Whereas the other guys, I think they got to let it all hang out. I think at this point, Kyle Busch and Alex Bowman have to really start swinging for the fences. So I like their price points, and that's where I'm kind of leaning it for this tier.
I think what's interesting about that Hamlin call is he could be so contrarian because of the fact that he's DNF'd in the last 2 of the 3 races in the next gen car here. So it's like the data pushes him way down the leaderboard and just there's not going to be a lot of people on him. But like you said, it's Denny Hamlin. If he finishes the race, he's probably going to be in a pretty good spot.
10th, 12th, 15th, something like that.
It's not far-fetched to think because Hamlin's actually ran well before in the old car at this place pretty well. In the next-gen car, he's never finished better than 31st, but it's not for a lack of effort because 2023, he qualified on the pole and led 33 laps before he ended up getting involved in a crash. And then just last year, he had an engine let go right towards the beginning of the race right there.
I forgot about that. I forgot about that because that was a big to-do because they were like, what happened? He goes, I have no idea. He goes, that type of stuff should never happen. Because they asked if he had missed the shift, and he specifically said, usually when that happens, it's a mixed shift or not the clutch. He goes, but I was doing those things. We got it. That was right before we started seeing all those Gibbs motors go because it was shortly thereafter that Ty Gibbs had chocolate milk spewing out of the exhaust pipes.
Yeah, you can never forget the chocolate milk right there.
Oh, I'm hooked on the chocolate milk because I remember Steve Letarte talking about chocolate milk coming out the exhaust pipes. Was it Texas? I think it was the Texas, an August Texas race, wasn't it?
It may have been. It was definitely one of those oval races where it happened.
I just remember seeing it. But anyway, so no, and Mark, I told you keep getting me think of these other angles where to get an edge. And I'm trying to be better about identifying bad chalk and identifying good contrarian. Like it's not good enough to just be contrarian. It's got to be good contrarian plays, right? Like Ty Gibbs last week, I think was a good contrarian play because he started high enough in the order and was priced up enough. There wasn't a lot of ownership there, but there was plenty of data to point to a good points day. And he scored what? 5th or 6th best points for the day or something like that. So I'm trying to keep these things in mind. And like you said, Mark, it's really tough. I don't want to get stuck on these plans before we qualify.
Yeah.
For example, when we get to the core 4, you're going to notice a name that I didn't mention earlier, and I'll explain why. But there's more to playing DFS than just knowing the sport and chasing speed.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's indicators. How many indicators can you have on a contrarian play? So, like, I think your Hamlin call, this is a great contrarian idea right now because there's a couple indicators there that tells us that a lot of people are not going to be on him based off of historical data. But thinking beyond the historical data and just from a racing perspective, there's a lot of reasons to be on him. So now let's see what happens in practice and qualifying. If he has good practice in qualifying and there's no car issues and everything is sound, those are probably a couple other additional good indicators that he could have a pretty good race and everyone else will still not be on him because of the historical data. Right. So I think you're onto something. Let's see how that idea now plays out going into the weekend and leading up to the race.
Yeah, there's a couple of drivers that certainly fit that moniker. Hamlin is definitely one of the good ones right there. But I do also want to give an additional honorable mention shout out to Joey Logano as well, too.
Fair.
Because he's also been top 10 in 2 of the last 4 Sonoma races right there, too. And he's even led laps in 3 of the last 4 as well. I think he's somebody that people aren't going to pay attention to, kind of like Hamlin. And that's going to also be a contrarian call. And
he's priced down. In fairness to Joey Logano levels, he's kind of priced down. And I'd love to go back and look at his ownership last week, but I bet you his ownership wasn't high last week. And if it wasn't for, I guess him and Ross ended up okay, but he probably paid off. I mean, all the Penske drivers, I guess Cindric did because he had that incident. But I mean, I got to hand it to both Blaney and Logano because you do not look at them as road racers at all. And yet, what, top 10? I mean, consistently? I mean, he did it last week, and you just said he did it 4 times, Sean. So, I mean, I think that's a good call, dude.
Fascinating how much we're talking about Team Penske here, given the lack of historical data, but just seeing it from a different lens, from a DFS lens. It's like, we don't think of these guys. We're probably not placing bets on these guys to win the race this weekend. That means that the ownership is going to be in check. And they could still very easily pay off for DFS purposes, given the price downs.
Yeah, I think Penske is going to be the sneakiest team out there to consider this week, especially because they're typically you see those Penske drivers qualify either just around the back half of the top 10 or somewhere within the top 20 range usually. But that right there is like kind of that sweet spot that we like to hit sometimes when we're doing these DFS lineups, where maybe they might just get you a few positions, get you like within top 15, close to top 10 range. But that could be a very big difference maker in DFS. You've pointed it out yourself, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, just to wrap up that thought, though, like you have to intake this information the right way, because someone could be listening to this and go, "Oh, I'm just gonna place a top 10 bet on each of Logano, Blaney, and Cindric."
No,
and that's exactly where our reaction is going to be. No, that's not what we're saying here. You might go 0 for 3, and all of those guys could still pay off in our DFS lineups. And so you have to understand what we're saying here and how that translates over to DFS versus betting. And it just is important to just realize that there is a true difference in how you approach betting versus DFS versus any other way that you would wager on the sport.
And I would say it doesn't hurt to not use the driver in both. If you want to bet them, pivot from them in your DFS lineup. If you really want to use them in your DFS lineup, find somebody else to bet.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
There you go. Speaking of pivoting towards different things, let's pivot towards our sleepers and values right here, fellas. So we got ourselves 3 drivers listed in all of them right there. There's some overlap here and there, that's for sure. For me, I've got Ryan Preece. Yeah, I'm finally back to mentioning him again. You can lock that down for how many times I said that this season. Then I have Todd Gilliland, the Todd father, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. And so, I mean, Preece, he's a driver that's consistently scored positive place differential at this track within the past couple of times he's been at this place. So I like him enough for that reason. But also just this year in general, Ryan Preece has been pretty steady when it comes to the road course events. Even though he's qualified high at both Mexico City and the Chicago street course, he ended up with top 15 finishes in both of them, and that includes a 7th place run at Chicago this past week. So something I like right there for Preece is how well he's been running. Todd Gilliland is another sneaky driver that consistently finishes top 20 in most road course events, but he also did end up sneaking away with a top 10 finish by finishing 10th in last year's race at Sonoma. And as for Ricky Stenhouse Jr., he's a driver that is someone you can expect in order to get positive place differential, as he's done so within the last 3 Sonoma races right there. So for that price point, because Ricky is very cheap this week, definitely like that right there.
I'm with you on Ricky. I mean, $5,200 for a guy that's given us positive place differential. We talked about it even last week, but he is underrated when it comes to road courses. And there's just something about him this year where it feels like he's kind of progressing forward. Brad Keselowski, I threw him out there too. So looking at RFK, but Brad Keselowski, I mean, you know, him and Preece, there's a chance we see them both start in like the 25th and 26th position together, and they just work their way up through the field. You know, so I think I could see easily both these guys, 25th, 26th, and finishing each within the top 15, $6,600, $6,700, $5,200 for these guys. I love the price points on these. And then also Ricky helps you, you know, get up to SVG. So just keep in mind the one problem with Ricky Stenhouse is he's probably going to be overinflated with ownership this week. So that's the one problem that I'm seeing here at Stenhouse. But there's a lot of positive indicators that we might just have to eat the chalk, even on the cheap end this week for a road course.
So I'm throwing caution to the wind and going completely off the radar on mine. But I'm not pulling them out in left field. So we mentioned Riley Herbst. I've been impressed with him since Mexico and Chicago. And I know it didn't work out in Mexico. It was okay in Chicago. But as cheap as he is, $4,900, this gives you so much flexibility in your lineup, and I don't think he's going to be highly rostered. He might be higher than I think, but look, the extra seat time, you guys know I love when these guys get extra seat time. That matters to me. I think he's a value. So I'm in on Herbst. I'm in on Ty Dillon. Like, Ty Dillon, also cheap. Am I expecting a lot? No, but I go back to Coda when we saw him in the top 15 at one point. if you see his interviews, he's having fun. I mean, he was talking a little trash to Denny. He advanced again this week and was talking about that. He's not a sexy name or a sexy picks, but again, if you go with Herbst and Dylan, them combined in pricing is lower than some of the mid-tier guys that we like, or the lower end high dollar guys we like, right? So it's a 20th place finish after starting 30th. I mean, again, to Mark's point, this is going to matter. Ty Dillon was a potential guy when you saw that he started 36th last week. If he starts 25th, it's tough to go and pay down for him. You know, yeah, the ownership will be low, but boy, you really are not chasing a lot of place differential points. So, you know, we got to keep that in mind. But I love both those guys because of their price point. And I just think they're flying under the radar and could do a little bit more. And then give me John Hunter Nemechek at 6,200.
Yes. I love this one right here, actually.
That leg is, man, I can't call them soccer club. They have earned the proper moniker of Legacy Motorsports. Jimmy Johnson, hat tip to you. I hate it when you get behind the wheel anymore. I loved you back in the day when you were driving and hated when everyone gave you flack. And then I started giving you flack. I got to give you props, man. I don't know how you've taken a single op team with 3 cars without a lot of support that everybody else has and has found a way to get faster. And all of them, all their cars have been decent on the road courses. Like, this isn't anything new. They've been, I'm not saying set the world on fire decent, but for guys that are priced at the bottom every week. So I'm a little bit off than everybody else, but I can't lie. I'm really in, especially on John Hunter and Herbst. Ty Dillon's much more qualifying dependent. John Hunter, I like him enough that if he qualifies well, I think I might be ballsy enough to try to go with it and take the finishing position regardless of the place differential.
I am totally with you on John Hunter right there, Rich. I think he's going to be really severely overlooked this week when I really think he shouldn't. He's 6,200 on DraftKings, 5,500 on FanDuel, but let me tell you about his starting positions and his finishing positions in the 3 road course races this year. Coda started 33rd, finished 22nd. Mexico City started 32nd, finished 6th. Last week at Chicago, started 25th, finished 15th. Positive place differential in all 3 of those races and big gains in all 3 of those races. Give me some JHN right here, too. I'm totally in on him.
I just think your value plays, Rich, are exactly in line with my overall philosophy where we talk about eating the high-end chalk and getting contrarian at the bottom.
I'm trying, man. I really am.
I think it's very probable that Stenhouse is the chalky value play, and some of those guys you just mentioned are the perfect 5% or less ownership pivots that we need to go after. So, I mean, think about like a Herbst Hamlin lineup, and then you could just eat chalk the rest of the way up.
Right?
Oh, yeah. And you know, the crazy thing is,
I really am taking this to heart, Sean and Mark. Like the stuff we've talked about and trying to implement, I really am trying to hone the craft a little bit better because I understand the logic behind it. You know, it's kind of like when we talk football, people love to stack and combo. I hate doing it in head-to-head because it doesn't make sense to me in head-to-head because in head-to-head, I'm chasing floors, not ceilings. In DFS, it's the complete opposite, right? We need to chase ceilings. And in order to chase ceilings, we've got to be different than everybody. We can't be on the same. But like we've learned, shoot, we talked about it. I had the one lineup that cashed, -3 points from Byron and Custer. But because of Byron's ownership and the contrarian play that I used in that lineup of Austin Hill, it worked. So I apologize, Sean. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just got a little excited about our process here.
Well, I'm just going to say I like all 3 of your calls there, Rich. I actually did consider all the drivers, even for my own list as well. I'm going to throw in 2 more names that I actually like that's under 6K on DraftKings as well to consider. Cole Custer and Eric Jones.
Yeah.
They were both, I was very close on both of those. So I get where you're coming from.
Why Eric Jones, though? I think I understand the logic behind Custer and how he's doing with road courses and doesn't necessarily need the speed. Why are you guys thinking Eric Jones?
Well, my whole philosophy with Eric Jones is you look at even the finishes, how many times he's gotten positive place differential. 7 starts, he's only had one single finish that's been worse than his starting position in his entire Cup career. And he also has 4 top 20 finishes in his last 6 Sonoma appearances, too. He qualifies deep enough. I actually am going to consider it, especially based on the speed that Legacy's been showing this year, too.
Where I was coming from, Mark, is he tends to, on these road courses, be 15, 20, like pretty consistently. Like we see him running there. We see him finish there. He is a driver. It's just like Darlington. Why do I like Eric Jones every time we go to Darlington? Yeah, he has a win there, and he doesn't have a lot of wins. He is really good at keeping his nose clean. One of the biggest keys we've seen from drivers that have historically done terrible at the road courses and gotten better, Dale Jr. is a prime example of it. He raced some Corvettes to get some experience, worked with Boris said, but he said it one time. If you keep all 4 wheels in the blacktop, you stand a good chance in the Nascar Cup Series of having a decent finish, especially at Sonoma, because there is a long history and habit of guys overdriving, creating wheel hop, and getting off the track. And we've seen it numerous times where guys are top 15 run all day long. And then as we get down to the last 10 laps, they start to get squirrely. And as they come down that one hill, you see dust all over the place as 3 or 4 cars are off the track. And now they went from a 15th place finish to a 25th place finish in a snap of the fingers. Eric Jones doesn't do that. Bubba Wallace does do that. As an example.
And I also have one more point to mention about Eric Jones as far as how his season has gone now, too. You look towards the first 9 races of the year. By the end of that point, he was 30th in the regular season standings. But ever since then, even up to now, he's climbed all the way up to 17th in the regular season standings. That is a big increase, showing he's been on the rise and steadily improving through the year.
The team's gotten faster. We are seeing it not just at the road courses. It's more noticeable at the road courses. But the team as a general whole is showing more speed. For as much as I was dogging on them to start the season, guys, they're making me eat crow.
Big time.
I said I would. I said if they got it turned around, I'd gladly eat crow. I don't want to see any jobber teams out there. I want them all to be competitive. And my only beef with Jimmy is I'd rather see Corey Heim in the car than you, Jimmy. I mean, it's stuff like that that's the biggest thing. I appreciate any of these former drivers owning teams. It's been in NASCAR's history forever. Junior Johnson, the Wood brothers, all these guys race Petty. They all race. They all own teams. So, when people get upset about Hamlin, I like to point out DEI, Dale Earnhardt. Y'all loved it then. You don't have a problem when Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch are running truck Xfinity teams and then they hop in it once in a while. So why are we getting mad about Denny, getting another full-time Cup team with charters, using his money and getting an investor like Michael Jordan, who's not a typical NASCAR name, but grew up watching the sport. And I just don't understand the hatred there. So
it's just because it's Denny.
I know. They don't he's into butt fun or something. I don't know. No, I'm serious. The whole joke with the or whatever. I mean, I couldn't care less, to be honest with you.
Well, what do you think about our reasoning with Eric Jones, boiling back to the original point there, Mark? What do you think?
It. No, I like it because I think it's just another, especially the element where he could be a safer play and also contrarian. I think that's a very very appealing element of rostering a guy like that. So
I hate that term in racing, though. I can't lie. I hate that.
Yeah,
because you could be 9 for 9, and then all of a sudden, number 10, you blow a clutch on the first lap. I mean, I just
William Byron this past weekend, everybody.
I know,
but that's Chicago, so that's. That was such an infuriating moment. The race starts, and it's 30 seconds in, and then you have the hope. I hate to revisit this, but then you have the hope that maybe he can make it back on the lead lap because they get a red flag. They get a red flag on lap 2. So there's a chance that he can come out there and get his lap back and somehow work his way back into it. No, he came out 30 laps in and he ran one more lap and called it quits from there.
Yeah, Chicago. Yeah. Let's just say I'm glad I didn't end up watching the whole race live because I would have been shouting many, many expletives.
But out of all of those value plays that we just mentioned, that we talked about, maybe a little bit more contrarian than a Stenhouse, John Hunter Nemechek takes the cake when it comes to odds. I mean, he's plus 3,000 for a top 3 finish in this race. But if you compare it to the next guy we talked about, I mean, Gillen's plus 4,000. Eric Jones is plus 7. Custer is plus 7 as well. And then Herbst and Stenhouse are both plus 10. So those guys are towards the bottom of the odds list on DraftKings right now when you consider top 3 finishes. And DraftKings obviously knows something to take data into play. John Hunter Nemechek, that's a fascinating play as well.
Indeed.
I'm trying, guys.
For sure. So credit where credit is due, Rich. You've got some good stuff in there this week, dude. So that
I
right
told
there
you,
is
I'm trying to adjust instead of just chasing places and guys that I know run historically well here. I'm trying to approach it like I do NFL fantasy drafts, right? Like the historical data only tells you so much. We need to use that to try to predict who isn't necessarily in the limelight or who's just outside of that threshold that everybody wants. That's good because we always see it. Someone's always going to jump up, right? And we don't recommend people reaching their drafts or anything. We don't recommend people overpaying or filling lineups with low-priced drivers. But look, there's plenty of history with John Hunter Nemechek running well at road courses and Xfinity Series races, right? There's plenty of history of Jimmy Johnson. Just like I like Denny as an owner in areas, Jimmy Johnson has had quite a bit of success on road races, and he got his background in trophy trucks. So that's not shocking, right? So there's a lot of other things that are kind of underlying and play into it that I'm with you, Mark. I feel like the odds are deep enough, but they're not outlandish, which means we're not off base if we think we can have a solid run. And if they are, like you said, Sean, focusing on race trim, which we see a lot of times when they run a lot of practice laps or it's a young team or it's a young driver, they're not working on qualifying trim. So the odds of them qualifying well are smaller, but the odds of them finishing better are bigger. And I feel like that's something we can focus on and recognize. And that does help give us an edge at times.
It does. Certainly does. Some tracks more than others, that's for sure. Speaking of getting some things in line for sure, let's get our core fours in line for sure right here. So DFS core fours, for me, I mentioned it earlier that I am taking a bit of an interesting approach right here to my core. Or rather, I set that off air to Rich, I think, and Mark. Yeah. Here's what I got. Chris Buescher at 8,600 on DraftKings and 11,000 on FanDuel. Ross Chastain at 8,400 on DraftKings and 8,500 on FanDuel. And yeah, I'm going there. I'm putting Ryan Preece back in the core right there. 6,700 on DraftKings and 6,200 on FanDuel. And then where I get interesting is that I have specific cores that are different between DraftKings and FanDuel this week. If I'm going DraftKings core 4, give me Michael McDowell instead of SBG at 9,300. If I'm going for FanDuel, then give me SBG right there at 14,000. I think the big difference here is that the price discrepancy between SVG on DraftKings versus him and the rest of the field on FanDuel is very big and notable enough that I'm willing to experiment around on DraftKings a little bit more for Michael McDowell's sake, just because right there, the SVG has a very big price difference compared to the rest of the field. And he's a little bit harder for me to trust this week because it's Sonoma where he doesn't have as much of experience and other drivers do. Whereas on FanDuel, I'm a little more inclined to use him just because the rest of the field is priced up closer to him. And I think he's easier to roster and fit into a lineup that way if you wanted to experiment around, especially with some of the other options that I mentioned being notably cheaper in FanDuel compared to where they would be positioned on DraftKings still. So that's what I got.
Perfect. I threw a little curveball on my core. Let me start with the bottom of the core and work my way up. I do want Busch, Herbst, and Reddick. I at this point, I don't know how much qualifying will skew my thoughts on this, just because for Herbst it will. But because Herbst is so cheap, I really feel like he's underpriced, and I think he's a top 20 finisher. So, outside of saying qualifying in the top 10 or something like that, or top 15, I struggle thinking I won't use him. I think Reddick's got to go for it. I really do. And I think he has enough history here, enough history in this car running well here, that there's enough of a reason to go that route. And I think he'll be chalky-ish, 30% type. I don't know. He hasn't been fast enough this year, I think, to really garner a ton of attention. So, and I do like Busch for the same reasons, right? And the price points there. Where I think I might pivot initially at SVG, this is where I might pivot to Ty Gibbs. I think Gibbs has got to go for the swing for the fences type of thing. You're running out of opportunities for that to happen. I do think it's a good enough team that can win on ovals, but he's really shown his road course prowess. And I don't know how much he'll be owned. And it is a little bit cheaper than SVG, so it gives you a little more options. But this will be qualifying dependent too. I mean, if SVG qualifies 15th, it's going to be very tough to not use him, because I think you're looking at a potential top 5, top 3 finish from him regardless. Ty Gibbs starts on the pole. I'm okay with it, but I'm much more uneasy, if that makes some sense.
Makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, I went SVG 12,500, Brad K 6,600, Priest 67, Stenhouse 52. This is mainly just a build core. So when I say that, considering that I think if you go SVG, you have to squeeze someone in around that 5K range, and that's how you offset the rest of your lineup and making sure that you have enough to pay up elsewhere. So if you're going SVG, you got to pay down at 5,200 or somewhere around there, like you said, with the Herps or something like that too. And then, if we're not going SVG, I think, a contrarian way of doing it is just loading up still at the upper end and then still paying down for like a Herbst or a Stenhouse or something like that. So I think either way, I kind of like the stars and scrubs approach, whether you play SVG or not.
I agree. And where I will say this is I probably will relook at this and consider using John Hunter Nemechek somewhere. So for example, if I don't go SVG, there's definitely more money to be used. I could find a way to get John Hunter in there, right? Or, if Kyle, there's something that alarms me with Kyle, right? I could see a change there to allow me to get another top driver in by, moving Kyle down to a John Hunter Nemechek or something. So because I really do want to find a way to get John Hunter in there. But the reason he's not in there goes back to what I was saying before. If I like a guy for DFS, I probably won't use him for betting. If I like a guy for betting, I probably won't use him for DFS. So, little teaser.
All right. Sounds good. Speaking of betting, let's get into our betting core fours here real quick. And for me, I got SVG at plus 130. Michael McDowell's at 11-1, plus 1,100 right there. Chase Elliott at plus 1,400. And then Chris Buescher is also at plus 1,400 for me too. Those are first 4 guys I got tagged in order to win. So what do you guys got?
Go ahead, Mark.
So I've got SVG plus 130 as well. I think you have to throw him in the core. We haven't talked much about him, but Kyle Larson's got some pretty good numbers here. Plus 550 for him. That's also like kind of like the range where, a lot of the books are respecting Larson and saying he's got a chance to win this thing. But probably a lot where you might those odds could even go down to like maybe plus 650 as we get closer to the race, depending on qualifying. And then Busch at plus 2,200, Chase Elliott plus 1,400. Chase Elliott's always a solid bet to win a course like this. And again, Kyle Busch at plus $2,200 for a guy that, is probably looking for a win. Big fan of that as well.
I like the little call outs there. Good stuff.
I like the Buescher call from you too. Or did you not do yours, Sean? You did yours, Sean. I'm losing.
Yeah, I did call out Buescher.
I do like the Buescher one. Look, it's hard to get away from SVG, like we said. Give me some Ty Gibbs love. I'm back on that train at 11-1. I think Reddick's in play at 14-1, and I love the Kyle Busch at 22-1. I was really torn between Buescher and Kyle Busch. I wanted to get some longer odds in there. I think the Elliott Busher calls at 14-1 are very solid, though.
Yeah. Good stuff right there, fellas. Good stuff. Wrapping up with some other bets and picks right here. For me, I got a couple of top 5 bets right here with Michael McDowell at plus 150 and Chase Elliott at plus 175 for top 5s. I also got a group winner bet right here on DraftKings Sportsbook here between Reddick, Bell, Elliott, and Allmendinger. Give me Chase Elliott at plus 240. And then this one's a little bit more bold here, but give me Michael McDowell as to be the top Chevy driver at plus 550 right there.
Interesting. Well, my gut shot call of the week, the McChicken, if you will. Give me John Hunter Nemechek for a top 10 at 4.5-1.
Yeah. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. He's betting it.
I am betting it. So that's why you didn't see him in the core. And that might change. But here again, I like the odds at plus 450. I'm comfortable making that bet today. I don't know that the odds will get longer for us where we want to bet them. Obviously, if they get shorter, we may want to bet them, but we won't get this good of odds. So that's where I'm at. But that's why he was not in the core 4, if you will.
Actually, as I'm looking at the betting board right here, there's one other deep top 10 I might actually debate about considering, and that's Todd Gilliland right there for a top 10 at plus 600.
Ooh,
I actually kind of like that too.
Bet. That's a good McChicken bet.
Yeah. He did do that last year. He finished in the 10th spot. So
I remember us cheering him on. Like, it was coming down to the last lap, and we were all like, is he going to get there? Is he going to get there? It was with Joey Logano, wasn't it?
Yeah. I remember now. That's the race where he spun Logano on the last lap. You get it.
Todd Father, you became a hero.
You're like, the better in me loves seeing that, and the Joey hater in me loves seeing that.
Yeah, it was awesome. I'm not going to lie, because I was watching the bottom of the ticker. Just wait, because it was like the seconds were coming down. Like, it went from, like, with 3 laps to go, he was like 5 seconds back, and all of a sudden he was less than a second back. And I'm like, oh, he might get there. Because if I remember correctly, we had it like parlayed or something. There was some factor where, I don't know if it was just long enough or what it was, where he helped make us some good money that day. So
yeah, he certainly did.
So I didn't have a whole, what was interesting is I feel like more odds and bets have posted even since we started this show. Top 5s are posted right now. So I like Busher at plus 190 for a top 5 just because of the fact that, he's probably going to qualify pretty high in the top 10. And if he maintains, gets up there, like we've talked about Busher a lot for a bounce back week, close to plus 200 odds there. I'll take that on him.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. I love that call. Smart call. Well, I do want to remind everybody, hey, this is brought to you by the Elite Plus Network and FantasyGuru.com. Please do us a favor. Comment, like, subscribe, do all those things if you don't mind. Please head over to FantasyGuru.com. If you like our content, you can get all of our content with the MVP package. If you want some more football content, hey, MVP's got everything but football and baseball, but it does have everything but football and baseball. So check out the football and baseball packages as well. We have something for everybody. If you're in the DFS and not betting or vice versa, we got you covered. You don't have to sign up for things you won't use. Feel free to hit up support at fantasyguru.com and tell them, hey, I'm in a state that allows this, not this. This is what I'm looking for. They will be more than happy to shoot you the most efficient and best options for yourself. Other than that, gentlemen, you got any closing thoughts?
I think ultimately we're just going to see some road racing there in wine country, and we'll see who gets to drink the wine right there in victory lane. So let's hope for that to be us right from home,
I picture wine and the wife drinking wine watching the race. I can't lie. I see that happening.
I got a Cooper's Hawk membership. Maybe we'll go to Cooper's Hawk and watch the race at the bar there.
Oh, now we're talking. There we go.
Not a bad call. Not a bad call.
Well, on behalf of Mark Hogan, please give him a follow on X at DFS_Marlin and Sean Engel. That's spelled SEAN, the short, nice, easy way. Sean E247 on X. Please give him a follow. If you really want to follow me, I don't recommend it. I'm at Fantasy Bosco on X. This is another Race Guru Thunder Hour. Until next time, peace.